Square Enix cancels multiple console games, suffers multi-million-dollar loss as part of a plan to be more selective and focused in the allocation of developmental resources. Yep, things aren't very good over in Square Enix. Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to the GNRO Minicast. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drak. I hope everybody's having an awesome day or night when you're listening to this, and this is actually an article that I wanted to talk about because it's part of an ongoing situation that I have been following because it covers one of my favorite companies, Square Enix. And of course, the article is being brought to us by BoundingIndieComics.com with Spencer Bercouli as the author. So let's go ahead and get into this, shall we? Did Sephiroth do this? I like how you started that, Spencer. That was good. Following an extended period of poor business decisions, struggling sales, and a lack of Kingdom Hearts releases, okay, last one's a joke, but still, hey, there are Kingdom Hearts fans. Back it up, Spencer. Square Enix has announced that in an effort to right their sinking ship, because if people don't know this, their ship be sinking really hard, they will both be canceling a number of in-development titles and working to be more selective and focused with their resources in the future. And for those who are wondering why they're having to right the ship so hard, well, it's a big fat problem that they have called Avengers. Now, it's not just them. They've actually had a number of bombs happen over the last few years, considering their very consistent means to try and get out products consistently. It hasn't really worked out for them, especially considering that their highly anticipated titles are taking probably a lot longer than they wanted. And man, that I can't mention it enough. Avengers was such a big blunder that as a result, they had to shut down the company that made Forspoken. They had to sell off Crystal Dynamics, and in some cases, they've had to change a lot of the practices that they normally abide by in order to stay afloat. But let's go over some of those. The Final Fantasy developer unveiled their forward-looking game dev plans by way of an official notice of recognition of extraordinary losses, filed with the Tokyo Stock Exchange on April 30th. Therein, Square Enix revealed that in light of the myriad changes underway in the environment surrounding its group, the company's board of directors has voted to revise the group's approach to the development of high-definition HD games or console games with the intention of being more selective and focused in the allocation of development resources, specifically in regards to their big budget titles. A lot of that is affecting the big budget titles, whether fans want to acknowledge this or not. They don't really have the resources to be able to have 3 or 4 Final Fantasy VII Remake-esque titles going on at the same time. It's just not feasible for them financially right now. To this end, the studio further noted that as a result of a close examination of the group's development pipeline undertaken in keeping with this revised approach, the company expects to recognize approximately $140 million in losses, and that's US dollars. It's 22.1 billion yen in content abandonment, basically canceled, game cancellation, and ideas being abandoned. Losses on its books for the first fiscal year ended March 2024. For those who don't know, the gaming industry's fiscal year ends at the end of March. So a lot of this kind of news is going to happen around that time, or it's going to slowly trickle out during that time. Unfortunately for curious fans, as of writing, Square Enix has not yet provided any details in this article. They have since gone into some of that, as to which specific titles were axed due to the restructuring. And we haven't really got any updates on that. However, an educated guess suggests that these cancellations are unlikely to have included either the third entry in the Final Fantasy VII Remake series or for Kingdom Hearts 4, as not only are both titles extremely far along in their respective development processes, but it would also be reputational suicide for the company to trash such a pair of highly anticipated titles. I also am going to throw in the Kingdom Hearts mobile game Missing Link, because that one is also pretty far along in development as well. And by far along in development, it's already had a number of beta tests at this point. So yeah, it's probably not affected either. As noted above, while Square Enix's announcement is admittedly eyebrow-raising, it ultimately comes as no surprise given the company's recent financial stumbles. And these are some of the examples that were there, per the company's previously released Q2 2023 financial results, thanks to the underperformance of such titles as Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. Believe it or not, that actually didn't perform to their standards. Octopath Traveler 2 didn't. Obviously, Forspoken bombed. The first two failing to make a splash due to being rather niche titles. Specifically, what they're talking about is Octopath and Forspoken, and the last due to being an outright abysmal experience. Ooh, that's not good. I'm guessing they're talking about they're talking about Forspoken. Square Enix suffered a drop in profits to the tune of roughly 20 million yen, and that's when we say 20 million yen, well, what does that mean? It doesn't matter. 20 million is a lot of money. That's a lot of zeros to lose. That is not a good thing that anybody wants to hear about. Further, though not abject failures, both of their recent Final Fantasy entries, Final Fantasy XVI and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, have reportedly posted middling sales numbers, with the former posting just 3 million sales in its first month in stores and the latter having its performance withheld from the public altogether. I believe specifically what they're talking about is Rebirth, because I don't think we know a lot of the numbers for that. And we do know that, unfortunately, 16 was an underperformer in terms of what Square Enix expected of it. Does that mean it's a bad game? A lot of people will immediately assume, yes, it means no, it's not. That's not the main reason. I have a feeling a lot of it was because it was getting overshadowed by a bunch of other games that were coming out around the same time. Also, the fact that people were more interested in what was going on with FF7 Rebirth instead of FF16, and that probably also didn't help the process. There is a myriad of factors, but it doesn't matter. The money was lost. At current, Square Enix's next release, the Dawn Trail expansion for Final Fantasy XIV, is set to go live July 2nd as of reporting for this article. And unfortunately, my opinion on this is that it sucks, because Square Enix is one of my favorite companies, and I don't like to hear them suffering, but the reality is, when you actually look into some of the releases that they've had over the few years, it's expected. They really overextended themselves, and it's very painfully obvious when you look at some of their past releases just how overextended Square Enix has been over the last few years. So while a lot of people might be looking at this as ultimately a negative, I actually think the restructuring might be a good idea in the long term, because they might be able to stem some of the bleeding that's going on from the massive hole in their budgets that came from Avengers and whatnot. Thankfully, since then, we've actually heard a lot of their initiatives that they're going to be taking on to be able to start making up for that lost money. One of which was the announcement of being able to go multi-platform. We'll go into that a little bit further in another mini-cast, because they do go into detail on that. But that actually was a good idea, considering, given where the finances are in the gaming industry, you just can't afford to be exclusive anymore, at least in my opinion. I like the concept of exclusivity, but it's not really justified in the current climate. So at that point, you do need to be able to bring out a lot of these games. And they've also announced a lot of games that I think are going to bring in a lot of extra revenue that don't necessarily take a whole lot of effort to make on their end. So basically what I'm saying is bigger profit windows for them to have, and hopefully that'll help stem a lot of the bleeding. Unfortunately, a lot of this is very much expected, but it's still not easy to hear, and it is genuinely my hope that Square Enix can pull themselves out. This isn't the first time they've been on the verge of bankruptcy. A lot of people know the stories for that, and hopefully they can do it again, but if they don't do things carefully and they don't do it right, this can end with one of my favorite companies going under. So I obviously will be watching this, and if you guys are going to be watching this, or if you guys have different opinions on what could have caused this and whatnot, feel free to leave a comment down below and we can have that discussion. Also, if you liked what I discussed here, you can leave a like on the video and consider subscribing to the channel, because that will also show with the YouTube algorithms and whatnot that having opinions like this isn't necessarily a bad thing. And we can actually make constructive feedbacks from our favorite game creators and help them to be able to continue to stay there for decades to come. But that is going to go ahead and do it here. Special thanks over to Bounding Into Comics and Spencer McCooley for the article. and I will catch you guys for the next GNRO Minicast. Until then, take care, my friends.